Thanks for that, Robert. Yeah, actually, there is some relationship between this presentation and the work I did with Robert's, but we don't get into any additive manufacturing here because I don't think it has reached the point where it is incorporated into large-scale industrial processes in North Korea. Could be wrong, but it's just not there yet. They certainly are working on it, but that's a different story. I last spoke here almost exactly 2 years ago on North Korean science and technology, on some of their industrial technology. So in many ways, this is an update. And at some point, I will have to pull those two talks together and turn it into an article. But what I'd like to talk to you about specifically are things that have happened in the last couple of years and that have been highlighted in the last year's time during leadership visits in North Korean propaganda and the like. You're seeing some of it here, and you will see how these three things, missiles, robots, and TELs, tie together by the end of the talk, I hope. Oh, one thing. When you look at this space, you'll notice a few things about it. There are no windows. This is underground, or it appears to be. Can't be absolutely sure, but you usually can tell. And I'm not going to get into which officials were present, but at all of these visits, a high-ranking official from the Munitions Industries Department of the Korean Workers' Party tends to be present. When you see those two things in combination, it's a pretty good hint that what you're looking at is a military facility. So, with that, I'm going to talk about three things. More than three, but three large things. One is how the North Koreans have been talking about science and technology and how that has changed. Two is what are the trends of late, moving from CNC, which is computer numeric controlled machine tools, to FMS, flexible manufacturing systems, which is an umbrella term that includes CNC and potentially a lot of other things. And then tying it together with their defense needs. How you can see how this fits into their military strategy at the moment. So let's start with ideology. If you follow North Korea at all, you've heard of the Juche ideology, or Juche Sasan, as they call it. This is an idea that developed in the late 50s and early 60s, and basically it means autonomy. Although they don't like to translate it, they say it's untranslatable and they use the word juche. But they break it down into three major categories. One is political, another is economic, and the third is the defense industry. Self-reliant defense, make your own stuff, and that's what I'm going to focus on here. Under Kim Jong-il, the second ruler of the country, Juche was, well, not de-emphasized, but elaborated into something called Songguk Jeongchi, which means military first politics. And the way that they expressed it was that the military was the main pillar of building a powerful state. And they really presented that in a fully fledged manner in late 98 after their first space launch and early 99. But within a year, they had really begun to play out the science and technology aspects of it. So ideology, the gun barrel, and science and technology are the three pillars in the construction of a powerful state. We should develop the Juche-based science and technology. Juche, again, means do-it-yourself. To the world level, in the shortest period, and solve the problems of science and technology, which is imperative to building a powerful state. And again, the other aspects are ideology and the gun barrel. So their view is if you build science, technology, and industry for military purposes, prosperity will follow from that. Now, Kim Jong-un, the new ruler since late 2011, has elaborated that. Instead of military first, which means both first in priority and first in chronology, he's been talking about walking and chewing gum at the same time. So his new ideology, which replaces military first is Directorate. Self-reliance and self-development is how they translate that rather awkwardly, but that is the North Korean translation. This was previewed 4 years ago in something called the Gyunjin no San, the line of simultaneous development, which means simultaneous development of two things, nuclear weapons and the national economy. So he's saying we're going to do both of these things at once. And then later, as Kim Jong-un assumed his full powers as leader, he sort of put the Songun military first heritage more or less to one side, said that was Kim Jong-il's idea, that's how it was done in his period, and they still honor that, it's part of their heritage. It's a layer in their history now, but that period is over. This is now the period of self-reliance and self-development. And what is that? Basically, that means science and industry for both civilian and military purposes. So shortly before what they called their first hydrogen bomb test, Kim Jong-un appeared at a museum where his grandfather had established their indigenous munitions industry, making submachine guns in the 50s. Perhaps it was actually the late 40s, come to think of it. And he used that as a symbol of their readiness to detonate larger and larger weapons. And he said, we need to steadily put big efforts into the development of the country's munitions industry. Then, at the 7th Workers' Party Congress, he said in his speech, May 2016, workers, scientists, and technicians have, in the recent years, waged an unyielding struggle on the principle of giving priority to self-development, to develop and manufacture new machines and equipment based on local efforts and technologies. So that's dual purpose. That really was, in context, it was about the civilian economy, but the statement itself is dual purpose. And then in the New Year's speech of this year, he's very clearly talking about both the strength of self-reliance and self-development in science and technology. Official scientists and workers in the defense industry should develop and produce larger quantities of powerful military hardware, our style. So science and technology is, for Kim Jong-un, the way that they're going to get around the problem of sanctions. They're going to develop what they need themselves, both in terms of technologies and in terms of industrial facilities. So both the capabilities and the capacity, they're intent on developing themselves to hurdle over the sanctions regime and export controls. And what you will see is that they are always importing foreign design information, sometimes foreign machinery, and then trying to reverse engineer it, trying to adapt it. They often use joint ventures with foreign companies to get access to the technology, and then they make it their own. So they don't necessarily invent anything in North Korea. In fact, I've never identified anything invented. But they're very good at borrowing and adapting foreign origin technology. So, let's talk about automation, because this is a big deal. They often talk about the need to save labor and how skilled labor is a bottleneck on the production floor. It seems that they have troubles training machinists in adequate numbers. I don't know why. But that's a point that they bring up again and again. So for many years, they've been talking about automation of industry. And this reached a new peak in 2009 during the transition to the new leadership, when they started to make CNC machine tools, that's digitally controlled machine tools, very prominent. Essentially, it is a regular machine tool, but it is computer controlled. So you can program it instead of having to guide it by hand. And they already had invested a lot in mathematics and computer science, so I don't think the software development tasks were out of reach for them. And even by the time they started promoting this, making it something they would put into rallies, they had song and dance numbers dedicated to CNC, watch on television. It was already a common sight when the leaders would tour industrial facilities. You would see these machines. Now, what's new is in the last few years, they've begun very extensive renovations of their defense industry. You can see this in Google Earth, you can see it in Planet Labs. I'm not going to show you any of those images. I'm going to show you stuff from inside the buildings, but you can go look. The footprint of these plants is just growing rapidly in the last few years. And the way they've explained this is they started talking about flexible manufacturing systems. Well, I had to look that up. What that means, that's actually a Western term, just like CNC. And their term for CNC is Xianxi, spelled letter C, letter N, letter C. They don't use Korean Hangul letters for that. It's a foreign term and they're not hiding that. It's a symbol of modernity for them. So they do say in Korean, flexible manufacturing systems, but what that is it's an attempt to automate as much as possible in a production setting. The aspiration that this is aiming at, I've read, is something called the dark factory, meaning, in other words, a factory where there are no humans on the floor, so you don't need to install any lights. They haven't gotten there, but again, who has? So, just for starters, this is a random image plucked off the web. This is a North Korean-made machine tool. They have two major concerns in North Korea that make CNC machine tools. Yonha is the big one. It's a joint venture. We don't know who the joint venture partner is. They've never spelled that out. A lot of us suspect it's probably a Chinese firm. If you look at the latest UN Panel of Experts report, they actually link some designs of machines produced at the major Yonha facility to designs produced by one Chinese company in particular. It was a comparison of three machines. You could see a family resemblance. They're not identical. So, but this is typically what they look at. You see CNC right there? And it's got a designation RT-125 that says in Korean Yonha machine tool. So this is what they look like. It's this off-white paint scheme, blue and red lettering, and then the black letters there. This is the CNC control panel. Chances are pretty good that's imported from somewhere. When you get a good high-res image, you can sometimes see the logo of the manufacturer, and it tends to be either Chinese or German. But you can't always see that. So it appears that they make these, and they just install that sucker, which they imported. I'm certain they aspire to make their own, but for now they don't seem to have any trouble getting them. And anyway, that's what it looks like. The other way you can recognize it, besides the paint scheme with the blue base, and it is the body style. This slight curvature in front is pretty typical of Yonha designs. The window on the side, so you can peer in. It's also very typical of how they make things.
Josh, is this particular machine tool for a lathe?
I think it is, but I'm not sure. I think it's a lathe. There are lathes, grinders, mills, and some of them are pretty recognizable. I'd have to look this one up, but I think that is a 5-axis lathe. I just plucked it off the web random. This is the production floor of their major facility. So again, you can see there are different types of machines on the floor here, and I couldn't tell you what they all are offhand. I'd have to do some work, but you can see that there is a family resemblance between these things. These things have that curvature in front. That one's more boxy. This one has an angled front. But they all have the windows on the side. They all have a certain look. They all have a certain paint scheme. Here it's a darker blue, although that may be a function of the photo.
Josh, is this from an advertising?
Yeah, I just got this off the web. This is from Urin Zokri website, which is a website run out of China by North Korea. So this is sales. This is marketing. They do export these, although it is forbidden under UN resolutions. But this is a rather large factory. This was renovated, I think, around what, 2009, 2010, 2008, something like that. Anyhow, now, here's one that I'm pretty sure is not made in North Korea. This is something from the Pyongyang General Tractor Plant, where they don't make any tractors, and to the best of my knowledge, never have. It's the largest munitions factory in North Korea. It's underground, which again is a good hint that it's military. It's very hard often to tell these machines apart. They're boxes. If you look at the logos and you look at the designation painted on it, you can look up what the marketing materials say. This one you don't need to. This is very recognizable if you spend enough time looking at these things. This is a flow-forming lathe. The reason you can recognize it is this carriage here. That's the key piece. It has this piece of hydraulics here, another one here, and another one that you can't see there. These are roller positioners. That, and that, those white things are the rollers, and they go in and out to squeeze a tube or other similar shape here. That's not the tube, that actually is the mandrel that the tube fits over. This is an example of the tube, the workpiece. And these are used for elongating, hardening aluminum or steel, typically. There are other applications as well. A variety of civilian applications, but I don't think this is one of them. The two most important applications from a non-proliferation standpoint are making rotors for gas centrifuges and making rocket motor casings for solid fuel missiles. Which of those this is, or maybe, I don't know, maybe neither, but that's what it looks like, and it doesn't look like a North Korean machine tool in particular. It actually may be a German manufacturer, it's hard to tell. But I've looked through a lot of these photos over the years and I've identified 8 or 9 different flow-forming lathes in North Korea. One of them at the Kusong factory, which is Ryongha's big competitor, that did have the styling of a Kusong machine and had no CNC control. So it looked like it was an early prototype. But nothing else ever looked like it again. They all look different. Some of them have resemblances to foreign machines. This one, as I said, looks sort of German. Their patent literature, you can see that they sometimes patent a particular piece of the machine, which suggests that they're probably were upgrading it or refitting it in some fashion. But these things have been a real hodgepodge over the years until last year. You have half a dozen identical flow-forming machines in the Ryongha style. You can see it's the Ryongha coloring and body type. You see the triangular carriage there with the roller positioner there and there. You just can't miss it. Some of these machines can be hard to identify, but this ain't one. Those are flow-forming machines. Furthermore, I didn't include it, but that little shape there's a high-res image where you can see what that is. And it is an award for a machine for done high-rate production. So when these were shown off to the world in this underground facility in April 2016, on the same day that Kim Jong-un seems to have observed flight tests of new solid fuel surface-to-air missiles for advanced air defenses, very similar to the S-300. We saw this, and what that award tells you is these things have been churning out their product already for a while. That is the famous, what is it, lathe number 29 award, by the way, Jeffrey. So you got, I don't know if they all have that, but you got a good solid half dozen of those. I mean, that's quite a statement. I don't know how many flow-forming machines there are in American industry, but wow, do they love them in North Korea. They just, you can't sneeze without knocking into one practically when you start looking through these images, once you know what you're looking for. So that suggests that they may have moved to a fairly high rate production of solid fuel missiles. That's a good clue. Can't be sure that's what the application is, but it would make sense. It is in the military setting. You can see that from, it's underground, you can see that from the officials who are present, and maybe the coincidence of timing with the SAM test was not a coincidence, hard to say. So, a few months before that, Kim Jong-un visited the 18 January General Machinery Factory, and that is the first time I've noticed that he started talking about flexible manufacturing systems. This became a model facility that they cite all the time, and they show off, and they say, this is what we're striving for here in North Korea. So NC, which means CNC, machine tools, robots, unmanned material carrier, automatic storehouse, et cetera, making it possible to remarkably raise the production with less manpower, remember that bit, and further improve the quality of the products. So let's see a few of the pictures. This is the automated warehouse. This is a robotic warehouse where we're in these huge overhead racks. Stuff is moved and stored. They didn't say what's being made there, but we will see what's being made there. It actually is evident. Here is a Yonha style machine tool. You saw this earlier. And a robot to handle the products coming off the machines. There's another identical one right here, just before the foreground. So the robot is turning this way and that, servicing them both, moving their products onto these conveyors. And they do a lot of robotics research in North Korea, but judging by what they've exhibited, it's fairly basic, and this thing is not one of theirs. Where did it come from? Well, here's another view of the same thing. See the letters upside down? ABB. That's a Swiss firm, a nice website. Here's one of their machines in Australia on a production line doing something fairly similar. But it's at a forging heat treatment plant in Perth, Australia. But pretty similar machine. They have a whole wide variety of robots like that. So it seems that, you know, coming back here, what they're doing is they are combining their own machines, parts of which are probably imported, with entirely imported machines to create this new production line. So they're both circumventing sanctions by developing their own stuff and beating it directly by getting their hands on foreign origin stuff. So the strategy they're using for overcoming sanctions is very much a hybrid strategy right now, and is moving more and more towards an indigenous route.
Josh, so what, I mean, if you don't mind interruptions during the presentation here. So here you clearly identified a Swiss item.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the repercussions for Switzerland of what would appear to be, at least what to me appears to be a violation of the sanctions, UN sanctions?
That's a good question. You know, I'm going to have to go back and see if the UN panel of experts report picked up on this. When they highlight things, Melissa?
It's also really common for these types of products to be resold. So the license should have transferred to whoever Switzerland sold it to, but then some company goes out of business, they sell their used equipment, and then North Korea's been really good at picking up this sort of reselling of used equipment.
Yep.
But the first recourse, it would seem to me, would be to go to the Swiss. And,
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of curious whether there are any activities
Not that I know.
pursued that.
I mean, there should be, certainly. I mean, this is out in public, people have commented on it. It's
The
no
awareness
secret
of
that-
people reselling is much lower than the Swiss company who manufactured it, who probably had some sort of internal compliance program.
on the boat. Anyway, so let's move on to the final part of the presentation. Meeting defense needs. This is February 12th, 2017. So here we see a large diameter, two-stage solid fuel missile launching off of transporter erector launcher, which looks really nothing like we've seen before, except it has some resemblance to a North Korean-made tank. And it turns out that the test area here is quite close to their main tank factory. In fact, it is It is a tryout facility for new tanks. So they seem to have applied their own local technology for the chassis. And while there's certain features of the TEL that are recognizably Soviet in inspiration, and that's where they bought these things in the past, is from the factories around Minsk in Belarus, where real TELs have been made for quite some time now. This is the first track TEL that I think I've seen. So they seem to have evaded sanctions here by just doing it themselves, doing it their own way. That doesn't mean they wouldn't prefer Belarusian TELs. In fact, their foreign minister visited a whole bunch of those factories in Minsk a couple of years ago. And as we know, they also imported some TEL chassis from the Chinese before that. So it seems that as they have been progressively cut off, they have doubled down on their strategy of doing it themselves. And this is the first iteration of that. Will they get to wheeled TELs eventually? They might. Maybe they actually see some advantage in having tank treads on the thing, but I think their preference is probably for wheels on balance. We need to be curious. So here's a partial chronology of those two events, what we saw before. So December 2015 is the first tour of the renovated 18 January plant where flexible manufacturing systems are discussed and showed off. March was the static test of the solid fuel rocket motor stage, where they took the engine of that solid fuel missile and tested it on the ground and showed us pictures. Then April 2016, the Tongsan plant, where we saw those flow-forming machines, and the solid fuel SAMs, the S-300 clones. That was in April. August 2016, they tested that new missile as off of a submarine, and also did the second tour of the plant. I don't recall which was which. I didn't look up the exact date. So we saw even more details of the plant again that summer. October, two unidentified missiles were tested at the Pangyong Air Base near Busan. They blew up, and you know, we all did a lot of interesting work on that. Some of the folks here used the near-infrared band of Planet Labs imagery to identify the burn scars on runways. And I had the pleasure of showing it off on CNN. That was a lot of fun, even though I had nothing to do with that. The Strategic Command press releases said that these missiles were presumed to be Musudan missiles, which are liquid fueled. That tells you they don't really know. They had a reason for guessing that, but they weren't sure. So I think they may have been solid. And then February 2017, of course, is what we just saw in the previous pictures, which is the land-based version, even closer to the Kusong tank plant, just down the road from Pangyong Air Base. So these things seem to be interleaved chronologically. And I now submit to you that while we don't know about the Tongsan plant, that may be about missiles, not sure. The 18 January plant, I'm reasonably confident I know what they're building there. It's the engine for the TEL. Here's the crankshaft on the production line. You can see another one right there. V8 engine block. Those are typically diesel engines for tanks and the like. And that really was the clue, was seeing that engine block and counting the cylinder holes. Oh, that's what that is. And then this picture again. These are pistons. So it took a while to figure that out, but they seem to have a complete underground factory, military factory, for heavy diesel engines that the leader was touring just before they rolled out the new TEL.